Good evening, friends and neighbors. My name is Terry Carter, and I am a writer and a poet. I also have the privilege of directing elder services here at our beloved West Medford Community Center. Welcome to our special Black History Month presentation of First Friday's Words and Music, delayed by a week to allow us to get our act together for real. Tonight we'll be embarking on a journey that will take us through the next several months as we explore the 20th century experience of the Black veteran with a particularly local focus. So, we're still building a broadcast archive with Medford Community Media, and we're pleased to see our past shows being rebroadcast on a regular basis. However, we are videotaping and live streaming tonight's program on Facebook for folks that are doing the online thing. If you're out there watching on your electronic devices, welcome to the show. Thanks as always to our production guru, Yvette Wilkes of Somerville Community Access TV. Our technical guru, Bill Hager from the West Medford Community Center. And in absentia, our friend Patrick Gordon, the new station manager at Medford Community Media. Tonight, we'll be presenting just a taste of what we hope to collect, catalog, and curate in support of our long-term objective. So we hope that you'll enjoy this evening of conversations, images, and video vignettes. We are also well supported by several community partners in this effort. Let me express our thanks to the Medford Arts Council, from whom we've received grant funding for this project, and Medford Community Media, who has already provided invaluable technical assistance. I would also like to mention that we plan collaborations with the Medford Historical Society, the Black Studies Department at Tufts University, and a whole lot of local folk with stories to tell and history to share. Joining us for the discussion this evening will be some of those folks that have both personal experience and family connections to the treasured legacy that we're so excited to be exploring. Now, we'll be back with some introductions shortly, but in the meantime, let's take a few minutes to look at this short promotional video which describes what we intend to do over the next several months. Please direct your attention to the screen behind me. A few months ago, we received a gift here at the community center. Our friend, Stephen Paris, donated a treasure trove of photo albums from the estate of his late stepfather, Whitfield Jeffers. Part of that gift was an unbelievable cache of military photos and published yearbooks from the 1940s, featuring soldiers of the 372nd Infantry and 272nd Field Artillery Battalion. It is our intention to use these photos as the cornerstone to the creation of a full-length video presentation exploring this essential part of our history. These beautiful black and white and sepia tone photos are of African American soldiers and officers in a U.S. Army that was not yet integrated. Candid photos, depictions of life in the barracks, on the parade grounds, and in the camps. Photos of service to the country that most people have never seen or even considered. These photos reflect the experiences of African American soldiers not only from West Medford, but also from Lynn, Everett, Malden, Cambridge, Boston, and beyond. It is the story of brown-skinned brothers and sisters who responded to the call of duty, a history that goes back to Bunker Hill, the Civil War South, the Great Western Plains, Cuba, Normandy, and Hanoi.
So, I guess the question is, why do we want to engage in this video project at this point in time? Well, to start, we know that America in general needs some serious remedial education around Black history. And it's clear this specific piece of history, this image of the black soldier, is one where false representations and historic omissions have created a real need for us to hear and learn from these stories. And we're talking about stories about sacrifice, stories of service, stories of overcoming endemic racism in the name of duty, story of men and women who often had to demand the right to defend this country. And these are stories we all need to hear.
From the perspective of the West Medford Community Center, this is a story we feel we are uniquely equipped to tell. For over 70 years, our doors have been open to the men, women, and families that have called this neighborhood home. That certainly includes an awesome legacy of citizen soldiers that have distinguished themselves in military service to this country. It's apropos that we can now dig deeper into their stories and illuminate some important history for a great generation of African American heroes. I, for one, can't wait to see what unfolds, and I'm excited about partnering with our dedicated seniors, local educators, historians, and storytellers to bring this project to life.
We will only be able to do justice to tell this tale with help from our community. We would love it if you could share your family stories, pictures, letters, and artifacts. We will also need support from community partners willing to contribute the additional resources we'll need to make this happen. We won't be able to tell the whole story, but we definitely plan to tell some of it. In the end, I think you'll be glad we did.
All right. So now that you have a sense of what we propose to do and how we propose to do it, please think about how you might impact this effort with your own family stories, photos, documents, and artifacts. A little bit more about that later, but let's set the scene further with a little bit of verse. This piece is called Shadow Service, and it's in my newest book, Brown Skin and the Burden of Proof, A Poet's Revelations. I served as my daddy served and his daddy before him. This country, a sovereign nation, a distinctive democracy, knowing full well that coming home was not my promise, but his providence. Knowing full well that what I loved in leaving might hate me as I returned. Knowing full well that the parades would not last, that the day after would not bless. I served as my daddy served and his daddy before him. Massachusetts 54, Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Cavalry, 24th Infantry Regiment, 93rd Division, Blue Helmets, Tuskegee Airmen, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Black units, segregated. Command structure, separated. Opportunity, discriminated. We serve with distinction. Purple Hearts and Medal of Honor, Croix de Guerre and Legion d'Honneur. We served as our fathers served and their fathers before them. We served around the world. We served around the country. We served in our own backyard, knowing full well that our families were often not safe in our own backyards, knowing full well that the Klan would still ride and crosses would still burn, knowing full well that no colors and white only would still attach to restrooms, lunch counters, and neighborhoods. The greatest nation rebooted a depressed, the greatest generation rebooted a depressed nation, despite the segregation at restrooms, lunch counters, and neighborhoods. 2.5 million of my brothers registered to fight and die. Few would offer an alibi, knowing full well that the land of the free was not yet to be, that Jim Crow's clutches held on tightly. Dr. King would say of Vietnam, a white man's war, a black man's fight, Brown's youth slain in the jungle night. Cassius Clay would say, ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. His prison stay was unjustly long. We got messed up as I placed the comma, coming home to addiction and drama, and never-ending racial trauma. We had Agent Orange poisoning from battlefield fires roiling and guerrilla warfare spoiling. We were POWs and MIAs, bodies unclaimed to this very day, a debt this nation can't ever repay. I served as my daddy served and his daddy before him. In the dust of Iraq and Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden, and Taliban, enduring freedom's master plan. Elite troops in the danger zones, RPG fires and deadly drones, the burning flesh and breaking bones. Life and limbs still sacrificing, but the razor of race is yet still slicing. To hate this government seems so enticing. Lost a leg to an IED that a faceless zealot planted for me. And my soul is bound to a war I can't see. A war that keeps on shackling me, a color line that hinders me. Why is my country still hating on me? And yet, I serve as my daddy served and his daddy before him. Shadowed service, despite the distinguished service crosses and the 4-star generals. Shadowed service, despite the legacy of heroes in the crucible of blood and sacrifice. Shadowed service for this country, a nation that proudly salutes its fighting men, but only truly honors a few. A nation that wants its flag to ever wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get this party started for real. All right, so as a further prelude to what you may expect to see in our completed project, we wanted to share a few of the stories we'll be continuing to compile over the next coming months. So let's take a look at a bit of the storytelling with our friend Warren Belden Sr. Please pay attention to the screen above.
Well, at first, I went into the Massachusetts State Guard, and only because the young men in my community, they joined,
Okay.
so I figured I would join too.
Okay. Well, how old were you when you enlisted?
In the Guard,
In the Guard, yes.
I was about 17 years
About
old.
17. And how long did you actually serve for before you got out?
I think it was, in fact, 1 year, and I had enough. I didn't want to be a career soldier. So.
Okay, what did your parents, your friends, your family think about you enlisting in the first place?
It was good. They were agreeable to it because they knew that it wasn't a long time situation.
Okay.
That's what they surmised, and I proved them right.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it.
Okay. Was your unit integrated?
No.
Okay, it was an all-black unit?
All black at that time.
Okay.
In fact, the service was all. It was segregated
At the time, still,
Yes.
okay, okay.
And I can explain further when I go a little further in my service position. Okay.
Okay, okay. So Did you have any bad experience?
No,
Okay, no, nothing racial or anything like that?
no, because we was
All brothers?
all brothers.
Okay. Now, was there a significant amount of time between the State Guard and the Air Force, or was it just a few years?
A few
A
years,
few years?
because I was almost 17 when I went to the State Guard.
Right.
And I joined the Air Force in 1949.
Okay. Now, you said that when you joined the State Guard, part of the reason why you did that was because a lot of your friends went in.
Yes,
Did you have friends going at the same time that you went in to the Air Force?
yes.
Uh-huh.
My best friend,
Okay.
we worked together at Shades Dry Cleaning,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know, like to spare the moment, I decided to go into the service.
Uh-huh.
So the only reason why he went into the service,
Uh-huh.
because he came to work and I wasn't there,
Yeah.
and he inquired where I was, and they said, Warren Belton joined the Air Force. And he left and joined right behind
Just
me.
like that.
Yep.
Isn't that something? So now we're talking about real military, so
All
to
right,
speak.
yes.
So tell me about your unit. What specific unit were you in the Air Force?
I was a air weather observer.
Okay.
I went to school for that
Mm-hmm.
after training at boot camp,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay.
I joined in the Air Force in 1949,
Okay.
and I went to Lackland Air Force Base, Texas.
Okay.
And when I joined,
Mm-hmm.
the president of the United States at that time was Harry Truman,
Okay. Truman. Yes.
and he passed a law to integrate the service.
Okay. Okay.
So I was very fortunate when I went down to boot camp in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I was segregated from the original Air Force unit that still had the black barracks
Okay.
behind the base. You know, fortunately, I was able to go into the white barracks. I mean, the structure was white,
Okay.
pretty. You had heat and everything.
Yeah. Yes.
In the other area, the black area, they had pot-belly stoves for heat in their barracks.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, I had heat in mine, and we were all integrated.
Okay.
And when I joined, well, let me see now. Well, anyway, the assignment was the northern boys
Mm-hmm.
were in one unit in a sense that were integrated into the modern situation.
Okay.
So when we went into the barracks
Mm-hmm.
after Truman passed that law,
Okay.
so we became a force to look after each other and whatnot there with the white ones
Understood.
that would do.
Understood.
You know, and so we we had one Jewish boy that was picked on at that time.
Okay. Right.
So what we did was we protected him.
Okay.
Okay, I was stationed in Fukuoka, Japan.
Fukuoka, Japan. Okay.
Right, that was in southern Japan,
Mm-hmm.
on the island of, what was that island? But anyway, Kyushu, on the
Okay.
island of Kyushu,
Mm-hmm.
Japan was. And that's when the war broke out.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, I was shipped to Korea
Okay.
in my duty as
As weather.
air weather service.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
The only thing got dirty on me was my fingernails. Pushing the pen. You know?
All right.
But I had a good experience.
Okay. All right. Very good, very good. Well, I appreciate you talking with us. I appreciate you relating the early years and then come back and telling us about the lady. Thank you. Thank you, Warren. Thank you. So, as folks in the city of Medford have begun to hear about what we're undertaking with this effort, we've gotten a lot of encouragement and support. Let's have a chat with some of those early supporters from around the neighborhood. Joining me now, and come take a seat up here, is the Director of Diversity for Medford, Attorney Neil Osborne. Local historian and storyteller Sharon Kennedy. Community activist and former soldier Henry Mallory. And WMCC Board President Brian Collins. Thank you for joining me, everybody. So Neil, I'm gonna start with you, old friend. From both a personal and a professional perspective, why do you believe this project has value for the city of Medford? And the corollary to that is, how is it reflective of some of the things you hope to accomplish in your role as Director of Diversity in the city?
Well, thank you for having me on and having the opportunity to speak about this. I don't think it's just important for Medford. I think it's important for this whole entire country. It's a story that is about struggle. It's a story about dignity. It's a story about sacrifice. These young men from our community and some women went off to fight a war where you would think each and everybody involved would all work together. Their stories tell a different story. Their stories tell us that this country still struggled with racism, segregation, and hatred. But they were willing to make an ultimate sacrifice where they may lose their lives in order to prove to this country that people that looked like them had dignity and worth and were an important part of this country. So when this story gets told from a West Medford perspective, it raises us all up. And I assume some of it will be painful, some of it will be joyous and involved in something that is critical to this country's safety. But it's a story that absolutely needs to be told. And as it's being told, I think I can bring people of Medford together. So I'm happy to lend a hand so this story can be fully told.
Thank you, Neil. Perfect. Thank you. Henry, would you please tell our audience first a little bit about your military background, particularly how and when you served, and then I'll have a follow-up question for you.
Well, we're going to make it short. It's a long story
Okay.
to tell, but we'll make it as short as we can. I was fortunate when I left Haiti. That was during the time of Vietnam. My family sent me to go to school in Mexico. Look, sitting in front of you, I should be a doctor. But I was amazed with firearm. So one thing that you have to do entering this country as a legal alien is to apply for the 1Y. The 1Y, that's what you agreed to serve in the military. Well, I ended up in Mexico, but I ran away and came here, which is here, West Medford. I said it, and I'm proud to say that West Medford is my birthplace as an American. Haiti is my birthplace as a Haitian. So I served, I ended up doing my time. Fortunately, today I'm living a beautiful life thanks to the military. I've learned a lot in the military. The military made me the person that I am today. Respectful to everybody, enjoy everybody, help and work with everybody. I will never change it for anything better. So you're going in just the direction I want you to go in. What was
probably one of the best memories you had of your military experience?
My best experience is I had a friend, a guy I grew up with in Haiti. Unfortunately, he died. He became a police officer. We had the same dream as kids. We were 9 years old. We wanted to go in the military. We wanted to go to war. So I ended up in South Korea on transition to Vietnam. I heard a guy calling, hey, hey. So my father taught me never turn around when they say hey. So I didn't. So he was smart to say, hey, Henry. I said, no, this guy's talking to me. I turned around. That was my dear friend that I had not seen in 5 years. I knew he was in New York. So he was stationed in Korea, serving in the military police. Okay, never mind. Now we ran into each other. We talked. We exchanged a lot of things. And from there, we started to build, you know, in our dream, saying, where were you headed? I was headed from Korea. I was going to Hawaii, from Hawaii to go back to Vietnam. And we kept in touch together until he came back here in Massachusetts, became a police officer. I went to Miami, became a police officer. I came back here again. I worked with him until he went to serve in Haiti as a lieutenant colonel. He wanted me to go to Haiti. I said, no, hell, I'm not going back. Well, my God let me back here again, you know. So I stay here, and that was one of the best experiences. Another thing I can add to that, most of the guys I've worked with today, whom I serve with, still living, most of them, and they occupy good, you know, good function in society. Okay, elevate our race. Okay, like another thing I told people, you know, I was born in Haiti as a Haitian. I didn't know I was a black guy until I came to U.S. That's freaking 1968. Okay, and the guy said, "You're a black guy." I said, "Holy cow, I never knew that."
Thank you, Henry. Thank you very much. I may come back to you, but I want to swap over to Sharon for just a second. Sharon, you've done considerable work in chronicling the history of Black West Medford.
Yes, but I'm totally outclassed today in this company. I'm in big trouble, Terry. I'm shaking in my boots. Go right ahead.
Don't.
Ask me anything you'd like.
Included in your book from some years ago
Yes.
on the topic of Black West Medford, can you maybe share a little bit about what you've written on the subject of DeVille's military contribution?
Phew, that I can do.
Okay.
So it won't be in my own words. It'll be in someone else's words.
Sure.
And this is going to piggyback on something that Neil said about what it was like to get out of the Army, what it was like to rejoin the civilian world. I mean, I still remember the movie with Ray Charles getting off the bus. I don't know if you remember, it was a terrible moment in which he finds out that he just came back from serving and now he's being treated, shall we say, very badly. So Wallace Counts, interviewing him in this book, and he says, and we will get to the specifics of the piggybacking on Neil. Wallace says, I could name other heroes I've had in my life, and I could name a half-dozen extremely important mentors, but my father and my mother transcend all the rest. My dad was definitely my biggest male hero. Elmer Counts lived for his family, his country, and God. He was very patriotic. He was a reservist in the 372nd Infantry, and he introduced a lot of the men around here to the benefits of being a reservist. In World War II, he went to officers' candidate school. Now this was a man who came from a family of 8 children, and he had only gone through the 8th grade. He went to officers' candidate school in Georgia, and he was very proud to be chosen to do that. On the other hand, it was very hard because the prejudice was so rampant at the time. This is before coming home, this is during. To this day, men who were in service with my dad and went on to become officers with him talk about the difficulty of going to the South. When they discuss how they couldn't eat at the restaurants or drink from the water fountains, you can see the pained look on their faces. It was 50 years ago, and yet it's as if it happened just yesterday. It's something they'll take with them to the next world.
What a fantastic reflection. Wow. Thank you so much. let me just take a minute, and I want to go over to Brian. Brian, from the moment that you and Bill and I started talking and sharing our vision about this project, you've been all in. Talk about why this particular topic resonates with you so deeply.
Well, I am basically a product of what this whole project represents. My grandfather was a master sergeant in the 372nd, and my father served in the Air Force. And when he was in the Air Force, he was at McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas, where I was born. So I come from a family steeped in military history and tradition, and I myself served in the Air Force. So when this idea came up to give them, shed some light on this topic, I am, just like you said, I am totally all in.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to thank you all right? But I want to tell you that we're not finished with you yet, all right? So even if we don't get back to you this evening, believe me, you are all involved in this, all right? Thank you very much. Thank you. We certainly hope to hear more of this kind of conversation as we move further into this amazing work. Next, we'll take another video snapshot with Edward, Buddy, Clayton. Please direct your attention to the screen. You first went into the service. Where were you living at the time?
I was living in West Memphis.
You was a West Memphis kid. Okay. How old were you?
20.
You were 20 when you first went in. Okay. So why did you decide to enlist?
Well, the reason I went into the Guard was, at that time, they were drafting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I didn't want to get drafted, so I joined the Guard, because they never take the Guard.
Right, right.
But, 6 months after I joined, they took the Guard.
Okay.
They took us. We were the only outfit that got nationalized from Eastern Massachusetts.
Is that right?
The only one.
Okay.
All black outfit.
So what did your parents think? What did your friends and your family think about you joining up in the first place?
They didn't like it.
Okay.
They really didn't, but they didn't stop me.
Okay. Okay.
They weren't for it.
Now, were there other? Because you guys were, you were kids. You weren't,
Yeah.
you were still
Exactly.
almost teenagers. Were there others from around this area that decided to go in?
Well, there weren't too many of the young ones, but there were a lot of the older ones, and that's why,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go, because I knew most of the fellas that were there,
Mm-hmm.
like Whit Jeffers and Steve Douglas and
Mm-hmm.
that group there.
Okay.
I knew them all,
Yeah.
and I decided I'd go in there because then I wouldn't have to go into the regular army.
Okay.
Not thinking that I would ever get national.
Right. So now, and once again, these were segregated units.
Yeah, all black.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where were you deployed during your tour of duty?
Well, the first place was Camp McCoy, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And typically, like in the Army, they took us out and lined us up in a formation one day.
Uh-huh.
And they said they needed medics.
Okay.
The sergeant walked down the line, he says, you.
Uh-huh.
15 of us, step out. So naturally, you step out.
Yeah.
He says, you're medics starting today.
Uh-huh.
And they sent us off to Texas, to
Uh-huh.
school.
So they didn't ask you at all about your background or anything
Nothing.
like that?
You,
Guy
you-
eyeballs you and says you're gonna be.
You're medics.
Okay.
And they
Okay.
sent us down to Fort Sam Houston in Texas
Okay.
for training.
Yes.
I was down there for 11 months. And believe it or not, that's the first time I ever was introduced to segregation. And I
Okay.
never saw it in Medford.
Yeah.
Everything in Medford, we were
Mm-hmm.
into everything.
Sure.
Boy, once I left Wisconsin,
Uh-huh.
I had some bad situations.
Okay,
Really bad
okay.
situations.
Give me an example.
Okay, the first one was, when we left Wisconsin, there were 5 of us.
Okay.
4 white guys
Yeah.
and myself. And I was the only NCO.
Okay.
So they gave me the meal tickets and the train tickets.
Okay.
Because the Army always took the person that was the highest rating and put them in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the meal tickets and the train tickets for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We went from Wisconsin by train to Chicago,
Okay.
from Chicago to St. Louis.
Sure.
St. Louis, we changed trains, and it was an overnight trip to San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
So the first thing that happened, they told me I couldn't go in the Pullman. So I said to them, well, look, I got the tickets and the train tickets for the 5 of us. We gotta stay together.
Uh-huh.
No. You go in the coach, they can go in the Pullman. So having traveled by train before,
Yeah.
I understood there's always an officer, Army officer, in every train station
Okay.
for problems.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to him, so they got him, and he came over, very nice guy, very nice guy. And I told him the situation, so he turned around, he told the conductor, he says, well, I'll tell you, unless he goes into the Pullman,
Mm-hmm.
the train's not moving, it's staying in this station.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're upset, they gotta get together, they got their heads together.
Yeah.
And to show you how stupid things can be,
Uh-huh.
what they did for me, they put me in a private compartment, all by myself. I had an air conditioning unit, a ceiling. I had everything I wanted right there, and
Yeah.
he told me, you don't have to come out for anything.
Uh-huh.
Anything you want, press this button,
Yeah.
and I'll get it for you.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was the biggest mistake he made,
Man, shoot.
because he was on his feet from St. Louis to San Antonio.
Uh-huh.
Because every 15 minutes I hit that button.
Uh-huh.
I wanted a cold drink, I
Uh-huh.
wanted a sandwich,
Uh-huh.
just to keep him running.
So you were doing it for spite?
That's for spite. Because to keep me out of the
Yeah.
Pullman, they gave me a private compartment.
Unbelievable.
But anyway,
Yeah.
And,
That's a great story.
that was my first introduction to
Okay.
it. But then when I got to Texas,
Mhm.
it was wicked.
Yeah.
Indiana was just as bad
Yeah.
as Texas.
Yeah.
It was,
I would've thought.
definitely.
Mhm.
Indiana was, in fact, if I had to say between the two, Indiana was worse than Texas.
Okay. Okay.
I can remember one time I went home on leave, and I came back, and I took my car with me, and I was driving, and Stanton Bell was with me, because he was also transferred to Camp
Okay,
Benton,
okay.
Indiana. And we stopped to get something to eat,
Mm-hmm.
and when we first hit Indiana, before we got to the camp, because we knew when we got to the base, we wouldn't be able to get anything because we'd be late.
Okay.
So we knew better than to go to a restaurant because they'd give you a problem.
Yeah.
So we said, there's a hamburger joint there, we'll go in there, get a couple of hamburgers.
Mm-hmm.
So we stopped and we went in. It was just a little joint, a little
Mhm,
hamburger
okay.
joint. The guy behind the counter, when we gave him the order, he says, we'll give you your order because you're in uniform, but you can't eat it here, you gotta take it with you.
Okay.
So that's what we had to do.
Wow.
We didn't want it, but
Uh-huh.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we took the hamburgers, paid him and everything and left.
Mm-hmm.
But Indiana was tough,
Yeah.
tough,
Very good.
especially Indianapolis.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And the best part of it was the whole time. The best part of it was I imagine what maybe being around the fellas.
Yep.
Yeah.
That really kept you going because you knew everybody and you kind of hung together.
Buddy, that's great stuff. And we know there's more to come down the road a piece. Now we're going to shift gears again and bring up our second group of friends. This time representing military family members with slightly different perspectives to share. Please welcome Leona Martin of Medford, Lexington. Cecil Fury of Medford, Woburn. And Clarence Ed Ligon of Cambridge, Medford. Come on down, you're the next contestants on the Price is Right. Have a seat there. Perfect, perfect. All right, I'm going to jump right into it. Leona, right now, your story takes us back the furthest. So let's start with you. Tell us a bit about the artifacts that you brought and the story of heroism in Charles Tyner's service to this country.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you knew Charles Tyner. Anybody? Yeah, see a few hands. Yeah, well, he came to Medford soon after he got out of the service. And he lived here for a good 50 years before he died. He married my mother somewhere along the way, and they were together for 49 years. But we never knew what kind of a hero he was until one day, I think, Normandy had the 50th anniversary, and we were at a restaurant, and he just started talking. All the years we knew him, he didn't say anything about his service. But then he's saying, Leona, you never heard such noise in your life. And then he started talking about his experience on Omaha Beach in Normandy. And what I understand is that there were not a lot of black people that were on the beach at Normandy. But the ship that he was on, he did more technical work, and he said he was on a landing craft that got stranded on Omaha Beach. But he was on the landing craft because if anything happened to it, he would be able to fix it. But he got stranded, and he was rescued off of the beach. I'll just show you. He went from there to let's see, he was on this ship, this transit ship that took all the landing crafts, these huge transport ship that had all these landing crafts on it, and they went from place to place. He was eventually wounded, even after being rescued off of the Omaha Beach. He was eventually wounded in the south of France. The boat went around to the south of France and the north of Africa. And he received a wound, and that picture that you see up there is, yeah, you see the helmet there? Oh my gosh. He, this is you know, a lot of memorabilia from it, but this is one of his caps from the U.S. Samuel Chase. That's the landing craft that he was on, and I just have so much stuff about him. But I want to show you. Okay, thank you. But why don't you hold that, because I'm going to take this. I don't want anybody else to take it because it's sharp, and I know where the sharp places are. But this is his helmet. Wow. And you see, it shows that the bullet had gone into the helmet. Wow. Oh. But you all knew him for 50 years after that. Yeah, but he never said anything about that until we were in that restaurant. And I had seen the helmet, but never knew the story. And, but the ship that he was on, it went from north of Africa, it went all the way around the world to Japan, and they were transporting prisoners and the like. So he has had a very lucrative, well, I don't know if I want to say lucrative, but a very heroic service, because, you know, I often say what he lived through, because the first ship he was on was torpedoed by the Germans, and he was rescued off of that. And I've often said that the prayers of his mother are what saved him, because he was taken away from her at a very early age. And she always said that someday she would see her sons again. And she finally did, about 2 years before she died. So,
thank you so much. That is fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. Now, if that is not a tale of American heroism, I don't have one for you. Thank you so much. So now, Cecil, your story has a very different flavor, because you were the brother in the Fury clan that didn't get to go off and serve. Can you talk a bit about what happened when the other brothers enlisted?
Well, it's a long story, but I'm gonna give you the short version. I had three brothers that were in the service, Armin, Bobby, and my brother Warren. And so when it came time, I graduated from Medford High School in 1952. And all of my friends, William Merriman, Rocky Chisholm, Charlie Evans, and all of us, we all hung out together, Chester Works and also. But they got out, when you graduated from high school, said, you know, what are you guys gonna do? So they all said they were going in the Air Force. So I said, well, that sounds good. So I came home from school and, you know, I was talking to my father. I said, all of my friends all going to the Air Force. I want to go in the Air Force. He said, you're not going. I said, what do you mean I'm not going? He said, look, your brother Armin just got out of the service. Bobby is in the service out of North Carolina. He's a paratrooper. But Warren, he was in the service also at artillery. So he said, you know, I don't want another one of my sons in the service because there was only three of the boys. So I said, well, he said, you got your plans all ready for school, aren't you? I said, I did until you told me that. That's what you mean. I said, I'm not going to school. To college, that was, okay? So I was, you know, hanging around that summer, and one of my cousins, Vivian Fisher, she told me, my brother Armin, she said, he had just gotten out. If Cecil wants to come to work, he said, I got a job up at the Raytheon, you know, he can come up there for the summer until he decides what he wants to do. So I went and worked there at the Raytheon, and what happened was, as time went on, I ended up staying at Raytheon, and they sent me to school, and I got an education from them, and I was there for 46 years. And that's where I started out, and there's a funny story I just want to tell you. We went down, I think in a second, we went down to North Carolina to pick up my brother Bobby, when he was getting discharged from the service. He was going to get married. So I went down there with my brother, my mother, my sister, Lucille, Bobby's going to get married, my father, myself. So father was driving down there, we were in North Carolina, and he said, you want to take over, Cecil? And I said, yeah, well, you know, I would live. But what happened was, like I said, my father wouldn't sign for me to go in the service, so I just, you know, I was one of his favorites, you know, so to speak. So he said, you want to take over, you know, and drive for a while? I said, yeah, no big deal, you know, 46 Nash, you know, going along. We're in North Carolina, we're going up a hill, high hill. And I'm sitting back there in the speedometer, going pretty good, and all of a sudden I said, we are climbing Jacob's ladder, we are, and so on. My mother's in the back seat looking at the speedometer, she said, Armin, that speedometer keeps going up there. He said, he's all right, Dot. So she said, no. If you don't get that boy from behind that wheel there, we're all going to be up there, Jacob, and we'll be looking for the ladder to come back down. So we ended up going to North Carolina, and as I say, the trip wasn't too successful because that night, when we arrived in North Carolina, my brother Bobby was getting married, you know, when we came home. And that was the night that the two women had signed the act there that they were going to stay for. They got extended for another year. Wow. So he came home and threw his hat on in the guest house. In the guest house, and my mother said, you know, what's the matter? He said, we just got extended for another year. Wow. So he came back to Medford, he got married, and then he went back for the other year. And I drove down with him the next year, you know, to North Carolina to pick him up again. But this time here, I didn't go too fast. No, as I say, as it ended up, I was very successful and glad, you know, how things turned out. So like I said, you don't know how one thing will close and something else will open.
Absolutely.
You know, that was my
Very good.
experience.
It's interesting because the irony of it is that even though you didn't go into the military, you ended up working for the nation's largest military defense contract. Mr. Ligon.
Yes, sir.
Now you are Cambridge connection today.
Yeah, Cambridge.
Okay, and Medford and Cambridge have had a long and storied history together. I want you just briefly, if you will, to talk a little bit about your uncles, because you had a bunch of uncles that were in the military.
Buddy Boo Babs.
Yeah.
Uncle John.
Yeah.
My Uncle Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
My father.
Yeah.
Everyone served.
Okay.
And my Uncle Cecil, who died in 1931, and I didn't know this, but he joined the 372nd.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who signed his death certificate in 1931 was Mr. Edward Duggar.
Mm-hmm. And he was a major at the time.
Yes, he was. He was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And And my Uncle Buddy was, and I saw from the first video, that Mr. Jeffers was one of his buddies.
Okay, see?
And Mr. Lloyd Parham was one of his
That's right.
buddies.
That Medford campus
And,
connection.
and I had, someone else was in there, but I can't remember who it was. I had, when I moved to Medford, I had the family over my house. And they stayed for a couple hours, and they had a good time.
Okay.
They had a good time.
Okay.
And my uncles never did talk too much about the war. My Uncle Vern saw Mussolini over there. My story about my Uncle Buddy, he joined, he was in the 372nd Infantry. And when 1945, he had to bring a white prisoner back to Massachusetts. And in 1945, with the white only, colored only, you know,
Yes.
coming back from down south, he sat in the white section, white guy, white section. And he had his 45, and no one bothered him. And that's about it for my family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very good. Very good. Fiona, Cecil, and Ed, thanks for allowing us to have this early peek at some of what we hope to continue exploring as we move ahead in this project. Why don't you take a seat with the audience and get comfortable again. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to forge ahead. We've got another video vignette, this time from our across the street neighbor and great friend, Joe Jones. So I'm here with my friend Joe Jones, West Medford man, and I want to ask you a little bit about your military background. Joe, what branch of the armed services were you in?
The U.S. Army.
You were in the Army, okay. And when did you go in?
I was drafted
Okay.
after my freshman year of college. A bunch of us were drafted in from Medford.
Okay.
So many of my high school buddies were there with me.
Can you tell me a few of those folks that were over there?
There was a gentleman who still has our high school union with Cecil Fury. His name is Joe Turco.
Okay.
Who became, he was the son of a family of jewelers, and he had his own jewelry business.
Okay.
And there was another gentleman named Richard Bruggeman,
Okay.
and a whole bunch of others who have long since passed away.
Okay. Okay.
But it was good having them with me because we were down in Columbus, Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, was the Army integrated, segregated? What was going on at the time?
It just had become integrated.
Okay.
That was 1959. Okay, but we were in the Deep South.
Yeah.
And the training sergeants were from the Deep South.
Okay.
And here we had a group of Yankees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they gave us a hard way to go, but
Okay.
we stuck together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately for me, when they interviewed us for what MOS maybe especially you make suitable, they found out that I had learned a year and a half of Russian.
Okay.
And the personnel officer said, well, we might consider you to go to California, to Monterey, and get involved with the Army Foreign Language program.
Okay.
So I signed up for that. But for some reason or other, those orders didn't come through, but they
Okay.
sent me from Columbus, Georgia,
Yes.
Fort Benning, to Fort Jackson, Columbia, South Carolina, for the second phase of training.
Okay.
When I got there, the Hungarian Revolution was in the midst of going on at that time.
Okay.
And we had droves and droves of Hungarian refugees, soldiers, who had signed up in Germany to become American soldiers to guarantee that they could have an entrance into American citizenship.
Got it.
And they tagged me because they know that I was comfortable with foreign languages to
yes.
help train these Hungarian recruits to teach them how to understand basic American military language. Yes. PFC Kirshner was Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me to chum around with him.
Mm-hmm.
So the first weekend when they gave us a break, he says, "Oh, let's go down to Club Shop and go to the movies." Big mistake on his part.
Okay.
Because when he got there, we discovered he could go into the theater, but I could not unless I walked all the way back and sat up there. And so he says, "No, well, that's not going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
That was it. That was an opening, an eye-opening
Okay.
experience.
Okay.
The South was not the same for us.
Yeah.
And although it was integrated, once you left the base, you were in the deep South.
Yeah.
Columbus, Georgia.
Jim Crow was still a lot of land.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
It came to the end very rapidly.
All right.
Before I knew it,
Mm-hmm.
I was on a transport back to home.
Okay.
And of course, the commitment was a full 6 years.
Yeah.
2 years of active duty, and then I had 4 years of reserve.
Okay.
And while I was a student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, every 2 weeks or so, we had to report for reserve training.
Okay. Okay.
Which was, from my aspect, a nuisance, but it was there. And then 2 weeks at Camp Drum, New York,
Okay.
to be prepared and conditioned for any eventuality.
Mm-hmm.
But the main benefit for me that I derived from that,
Mm-hmm.
it entitled me to have the GI Bill that paid for the remaining performance of my education.
Your education.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
And likewise, when I went to buy my real estate,
Mm-hmm.
I had that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no regrets.
Thank you for those poignant and positive reflections. So since we have several of these esteemed veterans with us tonight, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't allow them to comment on the videos they've shared. So let's bring Warren and Buddy and Joe and one more friend, Bill McIntyre, up for a minute. I just want to ask them each a question. Oh, can you have a seat?
Joseph.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It's a Come As You Are program. All right. Okay. So, as we sat and talked the other day, I have to assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to assume that each of you were filled with some feelings about me asking you to reflect on your military service and your military background. So, and I do need to keep it brief because I get into it at the end of our program. But I just want to ask each of you to reflect, if you will, on what you were feeling about recalling this part of your past. I'm going to start with Bill McIntyre. Won't you hand him the mic?
Well, I find it to be very important that people today don't have an opportunity to get into the military. They really don't understand that part of the life because we don't have the draft anymore. And it's your obligation to volunteer or whatever you might want to do. But it was a lot of learning and hardship and growth that goes on when you're in the military. So yes, military is needed by the country, but also it's a growth thing for the United States, because without the military having integration, a lot of things wouldn't have happened.
Thank you very much. So Warren, really this, the same question. What I really want to know is, kind of when you reflect on your military service, how does it make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel all right because I had no problem. Really. I never experienced, maybe it's because of my association. The fellows that mainly in my outfit were Northerners. And we came from what we would call the ghetto. And we showed that magnitude of our personality that nobody messed with us.
Okay.
All right. So I was very comfortable at all times.
You are very comfortable at all times. Buddy, go on, you got the mic, so why don't you tell me about how you were feeling?
Well, it was an education for me coming out of West Medford. We were just one big happy family. And I'll tell you the truth, I hated every minute of it. Number one, the way I was picked to be a medic. Number two, when the outfit was all ready to go overseas, I was all packed, everything ready to go overseas to pull the medics out and send us to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, which was the worst place in the world, to train medics to go overseas. And to train them young kids and see them go to Korea to get killed. It was awful. And that's just what it was. All young kids that were going. The other thing I'd like to mention that really upset me was when Harry Truman integrated the service. We were the last all-black outfit in the United States Army. They integrated us, and how they did it, they took the officers out and sent them overseas and replaced them with white officers. And that's what they call integration.
Wow. Okay.
So that's my idea of the service.
All right. Well, I'm glad you don't hold your tongue. Okay, Joe, why don't you talk to me?
In contrast to Buddy's experience, I was fortunate. I was in between the Korean War and the Vietnamese War. So therefore, when I went into service, I was, quote, in like the peacetime army.
Yes.
So therefore, I was fortunate to, I was at the right place at the right time. And I was sent to Munich, Germany for almost 2 years. And I experienced when I reflect on it, I experienced a 2-year vacation. Let me tell you, I took a European vacation because when I went on duty, I reported for duty every morning about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and 3:30 I was off, and for the next 12 hours or so, I was like a civilian. I could go to downtown Munich and learn the culture, the European culture, practice my German with the German people. And at that time, the American dollar was very, very powerful, very strong. And I could exchange that for 6 German marks, which the German mark was the German dollar. And I had power, go to restaurants where I would be treated like a king. Munich was located in Central Europe, and that gave me an opportunity on 3 to 4 day weekends to travel to any other country in close proximity: Switzerland, France, Italy, Spain. So I took full advantage of that. But I must say, though, that it taught me, it opened my eyes to, it added to enhance my education in life. And it taught me how to adapt myself to life, which I learned how to accept what life gave me and adapt it and carries through now to my life.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so soldiers, at ease. You can rejoin the audience, and we're going to take a look at Bill McIntyre's video. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. Okay. When did you go in?
That would have been 70, 68, 68.
Okay. What was going on in the world?
It was a Vietnam era.
Okay.
And they were looking for good stock. And so I was drafted.
You were drafted?
Right. I had just got out of college. And I was about to start going to work.
Okay.
And it wasn't a critical item, so my draft board hunted me down.
They hunted you down. Okay. All right. So where did you train?
Trained in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay. And did you get deployed?
To Germany.
Okay. What kind of stuff was going on?
Well, what happens is that during the history of this particular corporation, excess people that they didn't particularly want in the headquarters company, they would OJT people into that slot, because what you find out is that every corporation asks for a particular personnel to be filling different slots. And so what they would do is that if they saw the people coming in with the incorrect, as far as they were concerned, nomenclature, whether they were black, Jewish, or something else, they would fill that slot. OJT one of their favorites into the slot, and then when you came to the company, you would be declared excess in the company and be put into their outlying companies. You know, but I do think that people need to make sure that they do their duty to guard the country. That's not an issue. It's how and when and stuff. But the country has to be a little bit fairer to its soldiers and people that serve it.
Very good. Very good. Words of wisdom and of caution. So, to honor our veterans and the celebration of Black History Month that we're beginning, I wanted to share one more piece of verse. This is actually from my first book. It's called Brown Skin and the Bread of Life, A Poet's Journey. And after that, we'll close, and I'll come back and tell you about what else is going to happen this evening. Let me see if I can find this real quick. All my heroes are black men. In a land so far and so foreign from the soil of a sovereign birth, yet do the seeds of greatness yield a fragrant fruit for the sons of former slaves. All my heroes are black men. Even when the chattel chains were long around the muscled necks of bronze-hued boys, never was there total submission to the lash. The self-taught eloquence of Frederick Douglass pierced the hearts and minds of the liberal North with the fervent call of freedom's fight, while ever in the shadowed South, Vesey and Prosser and Nat Turner gave limb and life to the daring dream of flight from the oppressor to die free men, brothers in arms. Brothers in arms against oceans of injustice. Ever were we valiant, defending freedom's beacon, so valorous that our brave souls rose to revolutions not even our own. Peter Salem and Salem Poor at Bunker Hill, with Crispus Attucks near Faneuil Hall, valorous brown bodies given to revolutions not even our own, cloaked in the unsown flag of a nation not yet born, a nation with no love for its black brethren. Still heroes, if known only to a few, marching on all frontiers, conquering obstacles in their path, my icons of bronze. Inventing, interpreting, invigorating a land where their own defiant eyes were always raised against the glowering gaze of a white-cloaked tribunal. Benjamin Banneker and Granville Woods and George Carver and Garrett Morgan, men of science, industry, and vision, inventors of an alternate image for the sons of former slaves. Former slaves turned heroes, marching strong, marching to the beat of distant drums, now bearing the hybrid fruit of an African past. Sometimes the hopeful fruit of Dorsey's gospel, sometimes the bitter fruit of Handy's St. Louis blues, sometimes the spicy fruit of Joplin's ragtime, or the juicy fruit unpeeled by the regal new rhythms of jazz with King Louis, Count Basie, and Duke Ellington. Marching in sepia-toned triumph, speaking volumes about being someone, speaking volumes with voices of classical elegance, the bracing voices of Aldrich's Othello, Robeson's Emperor Jones, and Roland Hayes' vaulting spiritual tenor. Epic, jubilant, heroic voices, the diverse voices of a black-skinned truth, converting freedom's ideals into plans of action. All my heroes are black men of strength and character, inviting adversity and courting challenge. The challenge to Prince Hall, proving to colonial Boston that the 33 degrees of Freemasonry were not the sole province of the New World's white sons. The challenge of A. Philip Randolph to organized labor, Thurgood Marshall to American laws, and Ralph Bunche to the growing world community. The challenge to the Harlem Renaissance generation of artists, writers, thinkers, and doers building a permanent home for a black aesthetic in modern American culture. Defining hours in the industrial north when a teeming brownstone ghetto spilled onto the streets, revealing the genius of indigo and ebony inspiration. Langston Hughes and County Cullen chanted the poetic rhythms of these streets. Elaine Locke and Arthur Schomburg chronicled their vibrancy. Aaron Douglas painted the urgency and dark beauty of their striving to sow the seeds of legend and create new heroes, my heroes. Joe Louis and Jesse Owens showed athleticism, speed, and power to a world of great white hopes, while Jackie Robinson vaulted over the color line and into the collective conscience of the national pastime. The separate glory of the old Negro Leagues would soon fade, but wily veterans of segregated summers, men like Satchel Paige and Sam Jethro, would still teach them white boys a thing or two when they finally made it to the show. My heroes, all kinds of heroes, black heroes, cowboys like Deadwood Dick Love, generals like Benjamin O. Davis, flyers like Chappie James and the Tuskegee Airmen, fighters like the Buffalo Soldiers, prophets like Malcolm X, peacemakers like MLK, writers like Ralph Ellison, preachers like Richard Allen, athletes like Arthur Ashe, poets like Paul Laurence Dunbar, politicians like Adam Clayton Powell, maestros like Duke Ellington, filmmakers like Oscar Michaud, dancers like Alvin Ailey, doctors like Percy Julian, lawyers like Thurgood Marshall, photographers like Gordon Parks, painters like Romary Bearden, prize fighters like Muhammad Ali, comics like Richard Pryor, historians like Alex Haley, thespians like James Earl Jones, and just plain dads like Vonnie Carter. No lowly lives, no shame. It makes me proud to speak their names, my heroes. Heroes that tell me today what my people were like yesterday, what we are today, and what we can be tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Black men, yes, going, but not gone. Struggling, yes, but staying strong. Heroes for a horizon of new children. Children who have yet to learn of a legacy so dynamic, so desirable, so self-defining. Their legacy, their heroes, black men. We must teach them to read, show them the deed, and plant this wondrous seed so that they may truly find heroes of their own.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so that about does it for the words portion of our gathering tonight. But this is the proverbial tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot more ground to cover and lots more research, conversation, and collecting to do. To all my guests in tonight's conversation, Neil Osborne, Leona Martin, Sharon Kennedy, Brian Collins, Cecil Fury, Ed Ligon, Henry Malorin, Neil Osborne as well. Thanks so much for wanting to be a part of this ongoing effort. To Warren Belden Sr., Bill McIntyre, Joe Jones, and Buddy Clayton, thanks for the video stories, and I hope to sit with each of you again soon. I trust that we've piqued the interest of this audience, our online following, and the larger community that may see this program on Medford Cable or YouTube down the line. Special thanks from a distance to Stephen Paris, whose donations of these military photos and the albums of his stepdad, Whit Jeffers, are the foundation upon which we're building this project. I also do want to mention that there will definitely be a focus on the role of our women in the military. We've already gotten some great leads on this. And again, this is just the beginning, and we recognize that we have a lot more work to do. As I said earlier, we welcome your comments, contributions, and suggestions. We are casting our net throughout the greater Medford area, and we're ready to bring in some fish, big fish. Take the bait, don't hesitate, tell the story before it's too late. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your attentiveness and interest in our discussion, but we will now shift to a different groove and get into the rhythm and blues of our music for the evening. We'll take a quick pause as the technical team moves things around just a bit, then I'll be back to present tonight's musical entertainers. All right, and a hush came over the crowd. So, we are delighted to have a new group join us at Words of Music here at the WMCC. Some of you may have heard them at the recent MLK event at St. Ray's.
Yeah.
We've been trying to figure out how to get them here even before that. Another story, another time. S Factor is the only all-male a cappella group at Tufts University that specializes in music of the African diaspora, which includes, but is not limited to, jazz, gospel, R&B, soul, funk, and rock. It's most appropriate that we have them here with us tonight because when they come together to sing, they really are like a band of brothers. And though they come from many different walks of life, they call each other family. I believe that the connection mirrors the notion of soldiers coming together in the armed services. West Medford, please join me in welcoming Tufts University's S Factor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom.
With the
Oh, freedom over me. And before I see us rise, I'd be buried in my grace and go home to my Lord and be free.
Slowly the light dawned, feel just waste time. I've come too far from where I started from.
And before
Nobody told me
I'd be buried in my
easy. I don't believe
and go home.
He brought me this far,
my Lord, and be free. Well, I feel good, good, yeah. Well, I feel good, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, yeah, good, good, good. Well, I can love, love, well, I can love, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me love good, yeah, good, good, good. Well, I've got joy, joy. Well, I've got joy down in my soul. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that brings me such joy, yeah, joy, joy, joy. Well, we can sing, sing, sing. Yes, we can sing. Oh, yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me sing good, 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 good. Well, I can serve, 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 and serve and serve. Oh, yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me serve good, 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 good. If you feel good, good, good. If you feel good, then clap your hands. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. If I feel good, good, good. If I feel good, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel
How y'all doing?
We're
good. You like that?
Good.
Our next song is one of our standards that we like to sing at the end of our rehearsal, every single rehearsal, and we love singing in wonderful events like this. It's One More Time. It's a song about brethren, unity, love, and in the context of what we're doing, our love for Black music, our love for each other, our love for Blackness. Our love for Blackness. So here's One More Time.
One more
more time, one more time. He allowed us to come together one more time, one more time, one more time. He allowed us to come together one more time, one more time, one more time. He allowed us to come together one more time.
Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. One more time. Hey, He allowed us to come together one more time. One more time. Ooh, He allowed us to come together one more time. One more time. One more time. He allowed us to come together one more time. Sing it one more time, one more time. He allowed us to come together one more time. Sing it one more time, one more time. He allowed us to sing together. One more time, one more time. He allowed us to sing together one more time. When I get weak, as though I can't go on, feels like all my hope, all my joy is gone. I remember what He said to me, how He gave me peace of mind. He allowed us to come together one more time. One more time. One more time. He allowed us to come together one more time. One more time. One more time. He allowed us to come together one more time. Behold, how good, and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Behold, how good, and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Sweet
carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me. Coming forth to carry me home. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride on. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride. Oh, rocky Lord, come and easy. I got home on the other side. 6 white horses prancing side by side, oh. 6 white horses prancing side by side, oh. Rocky Lord, come and easy, other side. Swing, 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 swing low, swing low, swing low, swing low, and let me ride. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride, oh. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride, oh. Rocky Lord, come and easy. I got home on the other side. Sweet, sweet, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Coming forth to carry me home. Yeah.
As I said, tonight is the tease. So in terms of everything that we're doing with regard to the Black Veterans Project, and I suspect with regard to getting S Factor to come back another time. I do want to say thank you once again to all of the participants in tonight's program, and really to urge you once again, if you have stories, if you have photographs, if you have reflections and remembrances that you want to share with us so that we can incorporate it, even in a small way, into our ongoing project, we're looking forward to hearing from you. Bill's here, I'm here. And this is going to be something that evolves over the next several months. And in the end, what we're looking to do is probably a 2 to 3 hour long opus of reflections, remembrances, visual images, and etc. about this experience. Not only in West Medford, obviously Cambridge, Lynn, Woburn, Winchester. We know that there were Black veterans that came from all of these communities, and we want to make sure that we can be representative of that total experience. So thank you very much for coming out this evening. You've been a wonderful audience. I think this is probably the biggest audience that we've had for any one of our Words of Music programs. And it's really just emblematic of you know, the old children's song, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Yeah. I really believe that that's the truth. So, when you know that we're doing something, come on out and support us, because the more we get together, the happier we'll be.
around, talk to each other, enjoy each other's company, finish the coffee so I don't have to throw it out. And thanks much.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah,